These days, horses are defined by their type, their species, their breeding. In medieval times, though, we think horses were defined more by the job they did and what they were useful for. So we have a lot of words for the different types of medieval horse, and there's some debate about what they actually mean. But to give you some idea of what I think they were, we've got some examples of the type of horse that might have been around in medieval times. First of all, I'm going to show you an all-rounder. This is Bramble. She is a Welsh mountain pony. She is strong enough to carry me from place to place happily. She is a very solid creature, lovely to ride. She's not particularly tall, so she's nice and easy to get on and off, and does the job incredibly well. She's not particularly high status, she's not a fancy colour, she doesn't have sort of stylish breeding or anything like that. She doesn't come from an exotic place. In fact, she comes from the Welsh mountains, so she's a native breed of the British horse. But she does the job incredibly well. She probably wouldn't have been too expensive to buy back in medieval times, and she doesn't eat too much, so she's not too expensive to look after, and she isn't particularly high maintenance when it comes to getting sick or doing the wrong thing or injuring herself. So she's a very solid choice for somebody of middle status to get around. So there's your typical Rouncy, your typical practical everyday horse for riding. Now we'll move up to what I would consider to be a palfrey. Palfreys were ridden by knights, but they were also ridden by ladies and by people of higher status. And probably a palfrey was a little bit taller, a little bit finer boned, just as capable of practical use. Silver here is an example of the type of horse I think might have been a palfrey. So he's a gelding, he's still big and strong, he's got good feet, and he is very comfortable to ride. He is fairly fine boned, so he looks good if you're dressed up in all your posh medieval kit. He can still carry a knight in armour, or a lady. We've done jousts on him very successfully, so he's a very brave horse as well, but he's not quite the pinnacle of battle horse that many people will link with the knight. He could be used in war, and in fact we have records of people insisting that you bring a certain number of palfreys to war, or coursers, which is another type of horse. But a typical destrier is the sort of horse I'm going to show you next. Ghost here is from the Iberian Peninsula. He, in modern day terms, isn't a particularly tall horse, but he is very strongly muscled and very, very good at carrying an explosive speed. He has a certain look of nobility. He's a particular type of horse, which is called a cremello, which is a double dilute for those of you interested in genetics. He's about as light coloured as a horse can get. So he's incredibly fine, he's very pink-skinned, and he's got blue eyes, which a lot of people find quite striking, and I'm sure in medieval times would have been much sought after. But because he's a stallion, he has this incredible crest of muscle. Stallions fight other stallions in the wild, and this muscle is part of that combat package. This also means he's very strong at carrying somebody in armour. And horse armour that we have in museums is designed to fit over a crest like this on a horse. You can see how when he bends his neck, you can see this beautiful crest, which is also covered up by his beautiful long fancy mane, which again is part of his value. In medieval times, your horse helped define you as a person. So if you had a really fancy horse that was really expensive, that would tell everybody who you were and what your business was. So a fancy horse is kind of important, and a destrier as much so as before. He's got very strong forelimbs, a very strong back. He is surprisingly brave. He's in training though, so he isn't a medieval horse, he's a modern horse. He's trained for dressage, but we are in the process of training him for medieval combat. He's taking to it very well, but we have to go quite slowly because he's just not used to it. And of course, back in medieval times, he would have been selected and trained from it from a very early age. But because he's a little older, we've got to take it more steadily. But he is doing very, very well, and he is incredibly powerful in his movements and strength of purpose. One of the things we're going to show you in a later program is training Ghost. So we'll show you the techniques we use to convince him that medieval battlefield isn't as scary as everybody says. Obviously we're not going to really fight with him, but we will train him much like modern day police horses are trained. We need to train him to get used to all sorts of things that are going on. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time.